Hello, in this lesson we will learn Pythagoras theorem. Okay, the Pythagoras theorem is also known as the Pythagorean rule. Okay, according to Pythagorean rule, in a right angle triangle, the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the square sum of the two other sides, that is the square sum of the opposite and adjacent. That is the square sum of the opposite and adjacent side. Now if you don't understand what this note talks about, no problem, I'm going to explain that in a moment. Okay, now from our lesson in trigonometry, I talked about having a right angle triangle, and then in that right angle triangle, the longest side, now if you can watch this triangle, the longest side here happens to be this part, and this longest part is known as the hypotenuse. I want to use short form, so this is the hypotenuse, the longest part. And now once you get the longest part, the next thing you want to do is to figure out your opposite and adjacent. How do you figure out your opposite? From the reference angle, you have a reference angle here. The part opposite the reference angle becomes your opposite. So this is our opposite because it's directly facing the reference angle. Okay, and the next part is the adjacent. Now assuming you had your opposite, your reference angle here in this part, if you had a reference angle here from this part facing here, this K would have been your opposite, but funny enough or good enough, we don't have any reference angle there, so we don't have an opposite from that side. Okay, let's apply this to the formula. The formula says in the right angle triangle, so we have a right angle triangle here, the square of the hypotenuse. What is our hypotenuse here? We're using m to denote hypotenuse. So wherever I see m in this lesson, whenever I'm referring to this triangle, it talks about hypotenuse. So the square, you have to square it. The square of the hypotenuse is equal to the square sum of the two other sides. What are the two other sides? The opposite and the adjacent. So the square sum of the opposite and the adjacent, and we are done. So this is the general formula for the Pythagoras theorem. So you can as well think about it in this way, hyp squared. Okay, just a moment. So just know that this is talking about squaring the hypotenuse, and then you have the opposite as well squared, add it to the adjacent squared. So that's just what it's explaining. But because in this triangle we have this let's say figures or values, anyone can call them because they are variables. Because we have these variables, we can work with them, and it's all good that way. So let's go to an exercise and make this practical. Okay, using Pythagoras rule, solve for the missing sides in the right angle triangle below. Now we know the principle, we know the right law to apply. So the principle said the hypotenuse, okay, let me just use the square, is equal to the opposite square, is equal to this plus the adjacent square, right? Okay, what's the hypotenuse here is y. Remember to square it. The opposite is what? 4. Remember to square it, plus the adjacent is what? 3 squared. So we are solving for the value of y, right? So y squared is a variable, can't tell what it is, you can just keep it here. 4 squared means 4 multiplied by 4, which is 16. Look at that, 4 squared is equal to 4 multiplied by 4, and that's 16. It means 4 in 2 places, that's from index or indices. So plus 3 squared is 9, which means 3 times 3. So y squared is equal to 16 plus 9 is 25, right? Okay, the next step is, we remember I asked to solve for y, not y squared. So the next step is to take the square root of both sides, taking the inverse relationship. So taking square root of both sides, the square and the square root cancel out, that the square and square root goes away, and y is equal to square root of 25 is 5. Since there is no unit, you can just leave your answer as 5, and we are done. So Pythagoras rule is very simple. Okay, one more question and then we are done. Okay, for this question, we'll have the longest side facing this other place, which is the hypotenuse. So hypotenuse is 10. It means 10 squared is equal to, what's our opposite? Is 8. The part opposite the reference angle plus the adjacent, which is w squared. 10 squared is 100, that's 10 times 10, and 8 squared is 64 plus w squared. Funny enough, we can't actually figure this out. So the right step to the next thing to do, we just need to collect like terms. If we should collect like terms here, you can just move this towards here, leaving this to stand alone because we are solving for this. So we are isolating this variable or making it sort of formula. So 100 minus 64 is equal to w squared, right? Okay, so we can just do that quickly. So 100 minus 64. Okay, this is 6 here, this is 9. 9 minus 6 is 3, right? 36. So we have 36 is equal to w squared. Okay, so the next step is to solve for the value of w, right? So we'll take square root of both sides because we want to figure w by itself, not the squared. Taking square root here, so we're left with 6 and w here. So therefore w is equal to 6, and that is it. Okay, now you have a task. I want you to do this task on your own and make sure you understand this better. So you have question 1, pause this video and go through it, solve it. Questions 2. This video is brought to you by Precision Academic World. We are here to regain the passion for academic excellence. Here's our official WhatsApp contact, here's our email address. My name is Mr. Johnson. I am your instructor for this lesson.